The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. Every screen on Earth displayed the same image at the same time. A tall creature with gray skin and 4 eyes stared into the camera. Behind it, thousands of warships filled the darkness of space like stars made of metal. Grand Admiral of the Galactic Coalition spoke in a voice that machines translated into every human language. He told humanity that their time of freedom was over. The Coalition had watched Earth for many years. They had seen humans spread across nearby star systems. They had seen human ships grow faster and stronger. Now, the Coalition had decided that humanity was a threat. Gave Earth 30 cycles to surrender. Humans would give up their colonies. They would hand over their ships. They would accept Coalition rule. If they refused, the Coalition would take everything by force. 3,000 warships waited at the edge of human space. More could come if needed. The transmission ended. The screens went dark. Across Earth, people looked at each other with fear in their eyes. The Coalition was old. It had existed for 10,000 years. 12 species had joined together to control a quarter of the galaxy. Their technology was advanced. Their armies were massive. What could humanity do against such power? In the city of Seoul, an emergency meeting took place in a building with no windows. The leaders of Earth's government sat around a long table. Military commanders stood against the walls. Scientists watched through video screens from their laboratories. Everyone waited for someone to speak first. A woman named Director Shin Ara stood up. She was small and thin, with gray hair pulled back from her face. She had led Earth's defense forces for 20 years. She had never lost a battle. She had never shown fear. She did not show fear now. "We will send a response," she said. Her voice was calm and steady. "We will send the—" The room went silent. Then voices erupted from every direction. Some people laughed. Others shouted in anger. One general slammed his fist on the table. "One ship," he demanded. "They have 3,000. We should send our entire fleet." Director Shin waited for the noise to stop. When the room was quiet again, she smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. "If we send our fleet, we start a war," she said. "Wars are expensive. People die. Planets burn. We do not want war. We want the Coalition to understand a simple truth." "What truth?" asked the general. "That they cannot defeat us. That attacking Earth would be the last mistake they ever make. One ship will teach them this lesson. One ship is enough." Far above Earth, in a space station that orbited the moon, Captain received his orders. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he put down the tablet and looked out the window at the ship floating in the darkness. It was old. It had served the human fleet for 60 years. Its hull was from 100 battles. Its engines were outdated. Its crew quarters were small and uncomfortable. Newer ships were faster, stronger, and more beautiful. There was none of these things. But loved this ship. He had served on it for 30 years, first as a young officer, now as its captain. He knew every corridor, every system, every sound it made. He knew what they could do. More importantly, he knew what the Coalition did not know. He called his senior officers to the briefing room. They gathered around the central table, their faces serious. Lieutenant Park, the tactical officer, stood with her arms crossed. She was young, barely 30 years old, but her mind worked faster than anyone had ever met. Chief Engineer Ho Sung sat in the corner, already thinking about the systems he would need to prepare. Dr. Bay, the ship's doctor, studied a tablet filled with information about Coalition species. Sergeant 1, leader of the Marines, stood at attention near the door. "We have our orders," said. "We are going to meet the Coalition fleet alone." No one spoke. No one needed to. They had trained for this moment. They had prepared for years. Each of them knew what they carried in its old hull. Each of them knew what humanity had hidden from the galaxy. "The Coalition thinks we are weak," continued. "They see a young species, barely 1,000 years in space. They see a small territory, a handful of colonies. They do not see what we truly are. Lieutenant stepped forward. What are our rules of engagement, Captain? Minimal casualties. We are not here to kill. We are here to teach. Disable ships when possible. Destroy only when necessary. I want the Coalition to go home and tell others what they saw today. Dead admirals tell no stories. Chief Engineer Ho Sung raised his hand. Captain, the old girl is ready. I have checked every system 3 times. She will not fail us. I know she won't. Looked at each of his officers in turn. We leave in 6 hours. Tell the crew. Make them understand what we are about to do. We are not just fighting for Earth. We are showing the galaxy who we are. The departed Earth's orbit as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean. Millions of people watched it go. A single ship moving towards certain death. That is what the news channels called it. A suicide mission. A gesture of defiance. A final act of human pride. They did not understand. How could they? The truth was classified at the highest level. Only a few hundred people on Earth knew what the really was, what humanity had built in secret over centuries of quiet preparation. On the bridge, Captain sat in his command chair and watched the stars streak past as the ship entered hyperspace. In 12 hours, they would arrive at the Coalition fleet. 3,000 warships would surround them. Grand Admiral would demand their surrender. And then the lesson would begin. Closed his eyes and remembered something his grandmother had told him when he was a child. She had survived the last great war on Earth before humanity reached the stars. She had seen cities burn and armies fall. She had learned a truth that humans understood better than any species in the galaxy. The wolf that hunts alone, she had said, is more dangerous than the pack, because the wolf that hunts alone has nothing to lose and everything to prove. There was that wolf, and the Coalition had just made the mistake of threatening its pack. They dropped out of hyperspace in the exact center of the Coalition fleet. It was not an accident. It was not a mistake. Captain had ordered this position specifically. He wanted the enemy to see his ship from every angle. He wanted them to count it. 1 ship, just 1. On the bridge of his massive flagship, Grand Admiral stared at his tactical display. The single green dot sat in the middle of 3,000 red dots like a seed surrounded by fire. His 4 eyes blinked in confusion. Then he started to laugh. The sound echoed through the bridge. His officers looked at each other, uncertain. Was this a joke? Had the humans gone insane? Sub-Commander studied her console with growing unease. Something felt wrong. The human ship had jumped directly into the center of their formation. That required precise calculations. That required confidence. That required either madness or something else entirely. Open a channel, commanded, still chuckling. I want to speak to whoever is commanding that little vessel. The main screen flickered. Captain appeared, seated calmly in his chair. His uniform was simple and neat. His face showed no emotion. Behind him, his bridge crew worked at their stations without looking up. They seemed almost bored. Human said, spreading his arms wide. I am Grand Admiral of the Galactic Coalition. I command the greatest fleet ever assembled in this sector. You have courage, I admit. Coming here alone shows either great bravery or great stupidity. Which is it? Tilted his head slightly. Neither, Admiral, it shows efficiency. Laughter died. Efficiency. We did not want to waste resources on this conversation. 1 ship was sufficient to deliver our message. And what message is that? No. The word hung in the air, simple, final, absolute. Leaned forward in his chair. His amusement was gone now, replaced by cold anger. No, you come here with 1 ship, surrounded by 3,000 of mine, and your answer is no. Correct. Then you are a fool and you will die a fool's death, gestured to his tactical officer. Send 3 cruisers, disable their engines. I want that captain brought to me alive. I want him to watch while we burn Earth. 3 Coalition cruisers broke formation and moved toward the Each ship was 5 times the size of the human vessel, their weapons charged with a low hum that sensors could detect across the void. On their bridges, crews prepared for an easy victory. On the Lieutenant Park watched the incoming ships on her display. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced ease. Captain, 3 contacts approaching. Weapons hot. Arrival in 40 seconds. Wait for my command, said. Chief Engineer Ho Sung monitored the ship's power systems from his station below decks. Everything was running perfectly. The old systems that the Coalition could see were working as expected. The other systems, the ones hidden beneath layers of false readings and decoy signatures, were also ready. He whispered to the ship like it was a living thing. Easy, girl. Not yet. Let them get close. The 3 cruisers fired. Beams of bright energy crossed the distance between the ships in an instant. They struck the hull and something impossible happened. The energy did not damage the ship. It did not even slow it down. Instead, the seemed to drink the light. The beams bent toward the hull like water flowing into a drain. The ship's surface glowed for a moment, absorbing power that should have torn it apart. Then the fired back. 3 pulses of light left the human ship. They moved faster than anything the Coalition had ever seen. Each pulse struck a cruiser in exactly the same spot, the junction between the engine core and the main power grid. It was a point no bigger than a doorway. Hitting it from this distance was supposed to be impossible. The first cruiser went dark. Every light, every system, every weapon simply stopped working. The ship drifted, dead and silent. The second cruiser followed, then the third. 11 seconds. That was all it took. 3 massive warships, each carrying a crew of 2,000, reduced to floating metal in 11 seconds. Not destroyed, not burning, just switched off like old machines. Silence fell across the Coalition fleet. Grand Admiral stood frozen at his display. The readings made no sense. The human ship had absorbed direct hits from weapons that could crack planets. It had returned fire with precision that should not exist. It had disabled 3 cruisers without killing anyone. That last detail bothered him most of all. The humans had chosen not to kill. Why? Were they weak? Were they foolish? Or were they sending a message? Sub-Commander finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. Admiral, those cruisers are not destroyed. Their crews are alive. The humans targeted their systems with perfect accuracy. They shut them down without casualties. That is impossible, said. No weapon is that precise. Apparently, human weapons are. The communication channel crackled. Captain's face appeared again on the main screen. He looked exactly the same as before, calm, patient, almost kind. Grand Admiral, he said, I believe we were having a conversation. You asked if we were brave or stupid. I would like to offer a third option. Said nothing, he could not find words. We are neither, continued. We are simply prepared. Your coalition has existed for 10,000 years. In that time you have conquered many worlds. You have defeated many species. You have grown comfortable with victory. You have forgotten what it means to face an enemy who does not fear death. On the edge of the fleet, an old diplomat named Elder watched from his small shuttle. He was one of the few coalition members who had studied human history. He had read about their wars. He had seen the records of their violence. He had warned the Council not to threaten Earth. No one had listened. Now he watched 3 cruisers drift helplessly in space, and he understood something terrible. The humans had sent one ship because one ship was all they needed. And if this was what one ship could do, what could their entire fleet do? He began calculating the fastest route back to Coalition space. He wanted to be far away when the humans decided to stop being gentle. Back on the Dr. Bay monitored the vital signs of the crew. Heart rates were elevated but stable. Adrenaline levels were high. Everyone was alert, focused, and ready. She had prepared sedatives in case anyone panicked, but she would not need them. These people were professionals. Sergeant 1 stood with his Marines near the boarding airlocks. His people were armed and armored, ready to fight if needed. But watching the tactical display, he suspected they would remain spectators today. The ship was doing all the work. Captain ended the transmission to the Coalition flagship without waiting for a response. He turned to Lieutenant, who was already running calculations for the next phase. "They will attack with everything now," he said. "Are you ready?" Lieutenant smiled. It was the smile of someone who had waited their whole life for this moment. "Captain, I was born ready." The Coalition fleet began to move. Hundreds of ships turned toward their weapons charging. Grand Admiral had made his decision. If he could not capture the human ship, he would destroy it. He would use overwhelming force. He would erase this insult from the galaxy. He did not understand. Overwhelming force meant nothing to a species that had spent its entire existence fighting for survival. Humans knew what it meant to be outnumbered. They knew what it meant to face impossible odds. They had been training for this battle for a very long time. Dr. Bay had spent her life studying other species. She knew their biology, their psychology, their deepest fears. Now she walked to the communication station and asked Captain for permission to speak. He nodded. She opened a channel that would broadcast to every ship in the Coalition fleet. "My name is Dr. Bay," she said. Her voice was soft and clear. "I am the chief medical officer aboard this vessel. I am also a student of history. Before you attack, I would like to share some information with you." On hundreds of bridges across the fleet, officers paused. They listened. Some were curious. Others were afraid. Grand Admiral tried to shut down the transmission, but his technicians could not block it. The human signal was coming through on frequencies the Coalition did not even know existed. "Your Coalition is old and powerful," continued. "You have conquered many worlds. You have never lost a war. This success has made you confident, perhaps too confident. You look at humanity and see a young species. You see a small territory. You see a single ship surrounded by thousands of your own. You think you understand us." She paused to let her words sink in. "You do not." Below decks, Chief Engineer Ho Sung worked at his station with quiet pride. He had helped build the 60 years ago when he was young and full of dreams. He had installed systems that no one else understood. He had hidden capabilities behind false walls and dummy programs. The Coalition saw an old ship with basic weapons. They did not see what lay beneath. "Humanity has existed for 300,000 years," said. "We have only been in space for 1,000, but those first 299,000 years were not peaceful. We spent them fighting. We fought our planet. We fought diseases that killed billions. We fought animals that could tear us apart. Most of all, we fought each other." On the bridge of the flagship, Subcommander listened carefully. She had downloaded human historical records years ago out of curiosity. She had seen images of their wars. Cities turned to ash, fields of dead bodies stretching to the horizon, weapons that could burn the sky itself. She had thought these records were exaggerated. Now she was not sure. "Every weapon you carry," continued, "humanity invented centuries ago. Energy weapons, plasma technology, shield systems, faster-than-light travel. We created all of these things. Then we improved them. Then we improved them again. While your Coalition rested on its success, humanity kept building, kept learning, kept preparing for the day when someone would threaten our home." In his shuttle at the edge of the fleet, Elder closed his eyes. He remembered the council meeting where he had tried to warn the others. He had shown them human weapons tests from 100 years ago, tests that had destroyed moons, tests that had made stars flicker. The council had dismissed his warnings. They had called him a coward. He wondered if any of them would survive long enough to apologize. "This ship you see before you is called the," said. "It is named after a great king from our history, a man who built nations from nothing, a man who fought against impossible odds and won. The is 60 years old. By human standards, it is a relic, a museum piece. We use it to train young officers. We keep it running because we love its history." Captain watched with admiration. She understood something important. This battle was not just about weapons. It was about psychology. The Coalition needed to understand what they faced. They needed to fear humanity not just for what they could do today, but for what they could do tomorrow. "The weapons that disabled your cruisers are outdated by our standards," said. "We stopped installing them on new ships 30 years ago. We have better technology now. Much better. That was sent here because we wanted to give you a chance. We wanted to show you our past, not our present, because if you saw our present, you would not attack. You would run." Grand Admiral slammed his fist against his command chair. "Lies," he shouted. "She is trying to frighten us with stories. All ships attack formation. Destroy that vessel now." 400 ships broke from the main fleet and moved toward the... They came from every direction, surrounding the human ship in a sphere of metal and fire. Their weapons charged, their shields activated, their crews prepared for battle. Lieutenant Park watched them come. Her display showed hundreds of red dots closing in like hungry predators. She felt no fear. She had trained for this since she was 18 years old. She had run simulations of this exact scenario thousands of times. She knew what to do. "Captain," she said, "I have firing solutions for all incoming vessels, awaiting your order." "Remember," said, "disable only. No kills unless absolutely necessary." "Understood, sir." Sergeant 1 stood with his Marines and watched the tactical display. He had fought in boarding actions before, close combat in tight corridors where every corner could hide an enemy. This was different. This was war on a scale he had never imagined. And yet, watching Lieutenant work, he felt something strange. He felt safe. The Coalition ships opened fire. Hundreds of beams of energy streaked toward them from every direction. The space around the human ship lit up like a sun. There was no escape, no way to dodge. They simply sat there waiting. And then it moved. The ship did not fly. It danced. It spun through the incoming fire with movements that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. Energy beams missed by inches. Missiles exploded against shields that flickered but held. The twisted and turned, always moving, never still. Chief Engineer Ho Sung laughed out loud in his engine room. The old girl still had it. 60 years old, and she could still move like she was brand new. He had upgraded her engines in secret over the decades, adding technology that the Coalition would not understand for centuries. There was not just a ship. She was a work of art. While the ship dodged, Lieutenant fired back. Her fingers moved across her console like a musician playing an instrument. Each shot was precise. Each hit was calculated. She targeted engine cores, weapon systems, shield generators. She found the weak points in Coalition ship designs and exploited them without mercy. Ships went dark. One after another, they lost power and drifted. Their crews were alive but helpless. Their weapons were useless. Their engines were dead. In minutes, the attacking force of 400 ships was reduced to floating metal. On the flagship, Sub-Commander counted the disabled vessels. Her hands trembled. "Admiral," she said, her voice shaking, "we have lost 403 ships, all disabled, casualties, minimal. The humans are not trying to kill us. They are." "They are what?" demanded. Looked at him with eyes full of fear. "They are playing with us, sir. They could destroy us at any time. They are choosing not to." Turned back to the main screen. The sat motionless in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by the drifting hulks of Coalition ships. It was undamaged. Its shields were still at full power. Its weapons were still active. And Captain was smiling. "This is your last chance, Admiral," said through the open channel. "Order your fleet to stand down, accept our terms for peace, or continue the lesson." His 4 eyes narrowed. His pride would not let him surrender. His fear would not let him think clearly. He made the only choice his nature allowed. "All ships," he commanded, "full attack. Every weapon, every missile, destroy that ship or die trying." 2,600 ships turned their weapons toward every barrel, every launcher, every system capable of dealing death. They pointed at one small, old, impossible ship. On the bridge of the captain's side, he had hoped it would not come to this. He had hoped the coalition would be wise enough to accept mercy. "Lieutenant," he said, "you have full authorization. Show them what humanity can do." Lieutenant cracked her knuckles. "Yes, sir, with pleasure." The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. Historians would call it the 11-hour war. Poets would write songs about the ship that danced through fire. Generals would study the tactics and fail to understand how one vessel defeated an empire. Lieutenant Park worked with the focus of a master craftsman. Her hands never stopped moving. Her eyes never left the tactical display. Each ship that appeared on her screen was a problem to solve. Each problem had a solution. She found those solutions faster than anyone thought possible. The moved through the coalition fleet like a knife through water. It did not fight like other ships. It did not stand and trade fire with enemies. It flowed. It spun. It appeared in one place, fired, and vanished before return fire could arrive. The coalition gunners could not track it. Their targeting systems were too slow. Their ships were too clumsy. Chief Engineer Ho Sung pushed the engines harder than he had ever pushed them before. Warning lights flashed across his console. Systems ran at levels that should have torn the ship apart, but they held together. She was old, but she was strong. 60 years of service had made her tough. "Come on, old girl," Ho Sung whispered. "Just a little more. Show them what you can do." On the bridge, Captain watched the battle unfold with quiet satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The coalition ships were fast, but there was faster. Their weapons were powerful, but the shields absorbed everything they threw. Their numbers meant nothing when they could not hit their target. Ship after ship went dark. Lieutenant did not miss. Every shot found its mark. Engine cores shut down. Weapon systems overloaded. Shield generators burned out. The coalition fleet was dying, one vessel at a time. Grand Admiral screamed orders from his flagship. He demanded faster attacks. He demanded better aim. He demanded victory. His officers tried to obey, but they could not. The human ship was too quick, too precise, too impossible. Sub-Commander stopped giving orders. She stopped looking at her tactical display. She simply watched, frozen in horror, as the greatest fleet ever assembled was taken apart by a single ancient vessel. Dr. Bay monitored the crew from her medical station. Heart rates were high but steady. Stress levels were elevated but manageable. The crew was trained for this. They knew their jobs. They trusted their ship. They trusted their captain. Sergeant 1 kept his Marines ready at the airlocks. They might not be needed, but soldiers never relaxed during battle. They waited. They watched. They prepared for anything. After 4 hours, half the coalition fleet was disabled. 1,500 ships drifted in the void, their crews alive but helpless. The other half still fought, but their attacks grew desperate. Ships fired wildly. Missiles missed their targets. Panic spread through the fleet like disease. Captain opened a channel to the coalition. "Admiral," he said, "look at your fleet. Look at what one ship has done. We have killed no one. Every crew member on every disabled ship is still alive. This is not war. This is mercy. Accept it." Did not respond. His pride was too great. His fear was too strong. He could not accept defeat. He could not admit that humanity was stronger. The battle continued. After 8 hours, only 500 coalition ships remained active. Their crews were exhausted. Their weapons were running low on power. Their shields were failing. But they kept fighting because their admiral told them to fight. Lieutenant worked without rest. Her eyes were red from strain. Her fingers ached from constant motion. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Every ship she disabled was a victory. Every life she spared was a gift. After 10 hours, only 50 ships remained. The flagship was one of them. Grand Admiral had surrounded himself with his best vessels, his most loyal crews. They formed a wall of metal and fire around him. Captain studied the formation. It was impressive, it was brave, it was also pointless. "Lieutenant," he said, "can you disable the flagship without destroying it?" Looked at the tactical display. The flagship was massive. Its shields were still strong. Its weapons were still active, but she could see the weak points. She could see the path. "Yes, sir, but I will need to get close, very close." "Then take us in." They accelerated toward the flagship. The 50 remaining coalition ships opened fire. Beams of energy and clouds of missiles filled the space between them. They dodged and weaved, slipping through gaps that seemed too small to exist. On the flagship watched the human ship approach. It was coming straight for him. It showed no fear. It showed no hesitation. It was death in the shape of metal and light. "Stop them," he screamed. "Stop them now." His ships tried. They threw everything they had at the missiles exploded against its shields. Energy beams glanced off its hull. Nothing worked. The human ship kept coming. Lieutenant fired. A single pulse of energy left and struck the flagship in its engine core. The precision was impossible. The angle was impossible. The distance was impossible. But the pulse found its mark. The flagship went dark. Its engines died. Its weapons fell silent. Its lights flickered and faded. The greatest ship in the coalition fleet became a drifting tomb. The other 49 ships stopped firing. Their crews watched in shock as their flagship died. They had no orders. They had no hope. They had nothing left to fight for. Captain stood from his command chair. "Sergeant 1, prepare a boarding party. I am going to the flagship." One stepped forward. "Sir, that is dangerous. Let me send my Marines first." "No, this must be personal. The Admiral needs to see my face. He needs to understand that I am not a machine or a monster. I am human, and humans do not give up." The boarding shuttle crossed the distance between thee and the flagship in minutes. Brought only 4 Marines with him. They docked at an airlock on the flagship's lower section and forced their way inside. The corridors were dark. Emergency lights flickered. Coalition soldiers stood in the shadows, weapons ready, but none of them fired. They watched the human captain walk past with something like awe in their eyes. Walked like he owned the ship. His boots echoed on the metal floor. His face showed no emotion. He was not here to conquer. He was here to educate. The bridge doors opened. Grand Admiral stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his officers. His 4 eyes blazed with anger and shame. His hands trembled at his sides. "You," he said, "you have destroyed everything." "No," replied. "I have destroyed nothing. Your ships still exist. Your crews still live. Your fleet is broken but not dead. That was our choice. We chose to spare you." Why not kill us?" Stepped closer. He looked up at the towering Admiral without fear. "Because dead enemies teach nothing. Living witnesses spread truth. You will go back to your coalition and tell them what happened here. You will tell them that humanity is not a threat unless threatened. You will tell them that we wanted peace and they forced us to fight. And you will tell them that if they ever threaten Earth again, we will not send one ship. We will send all of them." He turned and walked toward the door. At the entrance, he stopped and looked back. "Think about what you saw today, Admiral. One old ship against 3,000, and we won without killing anyone. Imagine what would happen if we actually tried." He left the bridge. The doors closed behind him. Grand Admiral stood alone in the darkness, surrounded by the ruins of his pride. For the first time in his long career, he understood what it meant to be truly afraid. Elder's shuttle approached the Coalition High Council chambers 3 days after the battle. He had traveled faster than any messenger ship. He had pushed his engines to breaking. He needed to deliver his report before anyone else could twist the truth. The council met in a great hall built on an ancient station at the center of Coalition space. 12 chairs circled a holographic display. 12 species waited to hear what had happened to their unbeatable fleet. Their faces showed confusion, anger, and fear in equal measure. Stood in the center and told them everything. He showed them recordings from his shuttle's sensors. He showed them 3,000 ships going dark one by one. He showed them the dancing through fire like a creature made of light. He showed them Grand Admiral standing speechless on his broken bridge. When he finished, the council sat in silence. No one wanted to speak first. No one wanted to admit what the recordings proved. Finally, the eldest council member, a being older than most planets, raised a thin hand. This cannot be correct. Our fleet was the largest ever assembled. Our weapons were the most powerful in the galaxy. How could one ship defeat them? Because we underestimated humanity, said. We saw a young species and assumed they were weak. We did not look deeper. We did not study their history. If we had, we would have known. Known what? That humans do not start wars they cannot win. They have spent 300,000 years fighting for survival on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They have developed weapons we cannot imagine. They have trained soldiers who do not fear death. They have built ships that make our technology look primitive. Paused. And the ship that destroyed our fleet, they told us it was a museum piece. Their oldest active vessel, a training ship for young officers. The council members looked at each other with growing horror. If they was outdated by human standards, what did their ships look like? What weapons did they carry? What could they do? We must sue for peace, said another council member. We must offer them whatever they want. We cannot show weakness, shouted a third. If we surrender now, every species in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. Raised his hand for silence. The humans do not want surrender. They want respect. They want to be treated as equals. They want trade and cooperation, not domination. Captain made this clear before he left. Humanity is willing to forgive this mistake if we are willing to learn from it. The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council made the only choice they could. They sent a diplomatic mission to Earth. They offered a full treaty of peace. They apologized for the ultimatum. They promised to never threaten human territory again. On Earth, Director Shin Ara received the news with a small smile. The plan had worked perfectly. One ship, one battle, one message. The coalition understood now. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not a threat to be eliminated. Humanity was a neighbor to be respected. She looked out her window at the night sky. Somewhere up there was coming home. Its crew had done the impossible. They had changed the galaxy without firing a single lethal shot. Back on the ship, Captain sat in his quarters and wrote his report. He listed every action taken during the battle, every ship disabled, every life spared. He wrote about Lieutenant's perfect accuracy. He wrote about Chief Engineer Ho Sung's dedication to the old ship. He wrote about Dr. Bay's psychological warfare. He wrote about Sergeant One's Marines, ready for action they never needed to take. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He was tired. 11 hours of battle had drained him more than he expected, but he was also proud. His crew had performed beyond all expectations. They had proven that age meant nothing when skill and heart were strong. Lieutenant knocked on his door. He called for her to enter. "Captain," she said, "we are 2 hours from Earth. The crew is requesting permission to watch our approach on the main screen." "Granted, they have earned it." She hesitated at the door. "Sir, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think the peace will last? The coalition has ruled for 10,000 years. They will not forget this humiliation easily." Considered her question. It was the same question he had asked himself many times during the journey home. The coalition was proud. They had been defeated without losing a single life. In some ways, that was worse than a bloody war. Their pride was wounded deeper than any weapon could cut. "Fear fades," he said finally. "It lasts a few years, maybe a generation, but respect lasts longer. The coalition did not just fear us today. They respected what we chose not to do. We showed them our power, and then we showed them our mercy. They will remember both." He stood and walked to his window. Stars streaked past as the ship moved through hyperspace. Each star was a sun. Each sun had planets. Each planet had life forms that would hear about what happened today. "The galaxy is watching us now," he continued. "Every species with ears will learn about the ship that fought 3,000 alone. Some will fear us. Some will hate us. But most will simply wonder. They will ask themselves what humanity could do if they actually tried. That question will keep us safe for a long time." 2 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace above Earth. The crew gathered on the bridge to watch their home planet grow larger on the main screen. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling over familiar shapes. Dr. Bay wiped tears from her eyes. She had not expected to feel so emotional, but seeing Earth after what they had done made everything real. They had protected this world. They had kept it safe. 7 billion people would never know how close they had come to war. They would never know what the crew of the had done for them. Chief Engineer Ho Sung patted the wall of the bridge with affection. "Good girl," he said to the ship. "You did good. Rest now. You have earned it." Sergeant One stood at attention with his Marines. They had not fired a single shot during the entire mission, but they had been ready. That readiness mattered. That discipline had meaning. A soldier did not need to fight to serve. Sometimes standing ready was enough. Captain addressed his crew for the final time before they docked at the orbital station. "What we did out there will change history," he said. "The Coalition will never threaten Earth again. Other species will think twice before challenging humanity. We have bought our people time. Time to grow. Time to build. Time to prepare for whatever comes next." He paused and looked at each face on the bridge. These were good people, brave people. They had trusted him with their lives, and he had brought them home. "I am proud of every one of you. This ship, this old and beautiful ship, carried us through the fire. She protected us. She fought for us. And together we showed the galaxy what humanity can do." They docked at the station. Its crew disembarked to cheering crowds and flashing cameras. Heroes. That is what the news called them, defenders of Earth, legends. But Captain did not feel like a legend. He felt like a man who had done his job. He had protected his home. He had spared his enemies. He had chosen mercy when destruction would have been easier. That choice, he knew, was what made humanity different. Other species conquered and destroyed. Humans could do both, but they chose not to. They saw value in life, even enemy life. They saw hope in peace, even peace bought with blood. As he walked away from for the last time, looked back at the old ship. It sat quietly in its berth but unbroken. 60 years of service, 100 battles, one impossible victory. Humanity had sent one ship because one ship was enough. But more importantly, they had sent one ship because they wanted peace, not war. They wanted allies, not corpses. They wanted a future where humans and aliens could share the stars. That future began today. In the years that followed, the Coalition and Earth signed treaties. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. Former enemies became partners. The galaxy slowly accepted that humanity was here to stay. And whenever someone asked why humans were so respected, the old stories were told. Stories of a single ship against thousands. Stories of mercy shown to enemies. Stories of a captain who walked onto a defeated flagship and offered peace instead of punishment. They became a museum. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see the ship that changed history. They touched its old hull. They walked its narrow corridors. They stood on its small bridge and imagined what it must have been like to face an empire alone. One plaque hung near the entrance. It contained a single question, the same question that Grand Admiral had asked in disbelief on that fateful day. Only one ship. Why would humans send just one? Below the question, a simple answer was engraved in gold. Because one was enough.